Support for Soccer Today is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the Ultimate Man's Hygiene Bundle, the Performance Package. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com.
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane Rollins and Kevin Laramie, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for Tuesday, June 28, 2022. I'm Kev Laramie. Duane Rollins will be joining me in a second as we invite you to click on that subscribe button on YouTube and join us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers while you click on that notification bell also to be made aware of whenever we upload a brand new podcast. You can find our podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Of course, that includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and Google Podcasts for your listening pleasures. Duane, how are you today?
I'm doing well, although Blue Collar Dan, who always says hi to us, thanks Blue Collar Dan for that. I do want to say this, statistically speaking, if you look at short corners, they are far more likely to result in a goal-scoring outcome than in a swinging in corner, like a long corner. So I'm going to have to push back a little.
Swinging and long corners are basically not 50-50, but it's part of the game, just like booting the ball as a goalkeeper in a goal kick, where you don't really have that much accuracy, and the accuracy level and the percentage of success is not that high. But that's not today's topic, Wayne, but we do have a busy show today, as we will have our weekend review later on, breaking down all the Canadian teams in Major League Soccer. The Canadian Premier League result, we'll look at the Halifax Wanderers, HFX, with a club record this weekend. Of course, we'll talk about CF Montréal, a tactical analysis of their first half, and more with the formation, the stats, and also, to start the show, big news that dropped on Saturday, surprising a lot of us, Duane. It wasn't like it made it so known, but Gareth Bale decided to take his talent to Venice Beach. The Welsh striker has signed a contract that will see him keep busy in Hollywood until 2023. Options for 2024. He is not a designated player. They have a magician working contracts somewhere in Los Angeles, Duane, because Chiellini and, of course, Bale are not DPs. How the heck does that happen? With a new contract to Carlos Vela, also, by the way, that was announced on the same day. With this, we see Gareth Bale come to LA. 8 seasons with Real Madrid, 258 games, 106 goals, 67 assists with Los Galacticos. Duane, that's 0.82 goals and assists per 90. Very influential, but lately, over the last couple of years, it hasn't been easy. Injury, distraction, disagreements with the club have seen him perform at a lot lesser rate. But still, 41.3% of his shots are on target, and that's a statistics that I think will bode well for him in Major League Soccer, as if you put the ball on frame in MLS, well, you have a good chance to score a lot of goals. What is your thought on Gareth Bale coming to Major League Soccer?
My thought is that if you're trying to find ways to say that Gareth Bale can't be successful in Major League Soccer, you're trying too hard. This is a player that, despite not playing the last little bit at Real Madrid, that had much more to do with personality clashes with the culture, with him. It's more than just the golf thing. That's the cliche joke. He likes to golf, ha, ha, ha. Even the press conference, they said, well, you can mutually like golf and play good soccer too. You can, of course, especially Major League Soccer. Nice sunny days out there. You can go to training in the morning. You can golf all afternoon. Great. Love your life. And I would actually argue that maybe that might help him perform better if he's enjoying his life. If you're letting him golf more, this is a step down from Real Madrid. I don't believe I have to stress this, but it is. So he could probably handle that.
You're speaking of golf, you're teeing me up really well, Duane, for this conversation. I was looking at Google Maps and other entities in the golf world, looking at what motivation could Gareth Bale have to choose LAFC in front of Getafe or Cardiff City, which were the other two clubs that were linked to Gareth Bale? I found about 13 reasons. And they're all around Bank of California Stadium, baby. Here are your golf courses around Bank of California Stadium. The Bel Air Country Club. It ain't too far away. You can go from Inglewood to a lot of country. Burbank, not too far away, has amazing golf courses you see on your screen right now. That's a whole lot of golf courses just minutes away from Bank of California Stadium. Training in the morning, tee up at 4 p.m. and you got yourself an amazing day. Gareth Bale was always going to choose LA. He's going to Hollywood, he's going to Venice Beach, but let's be honest, Pebble Beach is where you'll find Gareth Bale.
Maybe, I mean, look, what I was, just to finish my thought previously, yeah, obviously, and, the PGA makes a lot of stops around there, too, so you can go watch some of his more, favorite golfers, too, and I'm sure he'll hang out with that crowd, and he'll be very popular in that course, because, you know what, the world is getting smaller in terms of world sport, and they're going to appreciate that, and maybe, Harry Kane came over. He watched the golf tournament earlier this year in between the weeks, too, so maybe they can join up and hang out together, too. Who knows? They used to play together back in the day, after all. Happiness is what matters, though, right? Like, he is going to be happy there. The other choice, I think, that would have made sense for him would have been to go to Cardiff, but the money just simply wasn't there. I think that and also it's not just the money. I mean, Cardiff, forget the golf, and yes, that it's rainy and not great weather half the year and all that sort of jazz. It's also a grind of a schedule for him to get through and play the championship. Does Gareth Bale want to play in the championship at this point in time? I think he wants to stay in shape to play at the World Cup, and then he'll evaluate what he wants to do after that. He may just move back. He may retire. Like, I could see him just retiring at the end of this contract.
Sure.
That's fine, too.
Yeah, and we're still not clear. Some places say until June 2023, a 12-month contract. Some places, in the same article, actually says through 2023. So whichever the case may be, maybe after the World Cup, it'll be different, too. But Gareth Bale comes to LAFC, as LAFC is in the headlines already this week for the signing of Giorgio Chiellini and for the extension of contract of Carlos Vela, not to fall under deaf ears, but Carlos Vela has signed a brand new contract. He's continuing to be a DP, and LAFC is going all in after maybe renegating denying their philosophy of getting stars for like a year and a half. They're back at it now with a big momentum heading into the second half of the season. They're on top of the Western Conference, on top of the Supporters' Shield race. Gareth Bale hasn't played yet, and they are 33 points in the Supporters' Shield standings. Also, they had a big victory this weekend versus New York versus the Red Bulls at home at Bank of California Stadium, not too far from a lot of golf courses like we talked about. Christian Arango and Diego Palacio scored in 3 minutes of doom for LAFC, beating the Red Bulls. LAFC continues to be, on paper, the best team in the league, and probably will continue to do so if the chemistry exists between Chiellini and Vela and their new compatriots in LA. Are they, Duane, right now the Supporters' Shield and MLS Cup favorite?
Well, yes. There's your short answer. I mean, look, again, I'll go back to trying too hard. If you're trying to argue they're not, you're trying too hard. The talent on this team is unbelievable. In fact, I'm sitting beside a scarf. You can't see it in my shot that says "We won blanket everything." It's a TFC scarf for 2017. Generally considered by most neutrals to be the best MLS team of all time because they did win 3 trophies. I would argue that on paper that this team, LAFC, might be more talented than that team. They can't win 3 trophies this year because they're out of one, but they can definitely win a double. And if they do that, they're absolutely in a conversation like that about the best teams of all time in this league. Signing up Vela is more important than bringing in Bale. In fact, I don't think Bale's going to perform poorly, but you have to work him into the lineup. You might have to figure some things out. The only issue you might have, and this is grasping at straws if you're somebody else trying to chase them down, is whether or not they can gel, whether or not that chemistry might get tipped a little bit because they're having a good season without these stars coming in. But that said, when you're having a good season and you're bringing a couple of big solid stars in, a couple of veterans that have won at various levels, you're talking to a guy that's won a World Cup. You're talking about a guy that's won not a World Cup, a Euro, pardon me, because he wasn't in the World Cup in 2006 when he wasn't, but he was won the Euro, absolutely. Any guy that won multiple Champions Leagues, then that's nothing but success can come from that. Really, it's set up for that. The other big issue with whether they can win a MLS Cup, of course, is the lottery-like nature of a one-game playoff. God knows you could have a Salt Lake City go in and do what they did to Seattle last year and they not win it. But in terms of this team being set up to be successful, it's hard to remember many that weren't set up as well as this, Kevin.
Yeah, and looking ahead, I can see LAFC being a very difficult place to play at Vega California Stadium and being a team that is very difficult to beat going forward. We saw they're on top of the Western Conference, and they will stay there, in my opinion, for a long time to come. Congratulations, LAFC, for your turnaround and surprising us all, mea culpa myself, for doubting the signing of Steve Cherundolo, but we don't really hear about Steve Cherundolo, and that's the type of manager I think he wanted to be, bridging the gap between what the philosophies of Bob Bradley was. Where he wants to be is different than it is now, and he's going to bridge the difference between the two, and that's going to be a fun time. But for now, LAFC fans are really happy. The stands should get more full. There was a little bit of a downward, not necessarily trend, but not as many fans over the last few months. This should change with the advent of Chiellini and, of course, Gareth Bale and Carlos Vela. You're going to see a party in Hollywood. The stars will be back. Will Ferrell, part owner, I guess, will be there more often than, I guess, the last few weeks. It will be a party in LA. Somewhere it was a party. It was at Stade Saputo Saturday. Montreal, big win versus Charlotte FC. And I wanted to bring your attention, Duane, to a research I was doing yesterday. And that's looking at Montreal. Of course, they have to remediate the injury to Georgi Mihailovic. Ahmed Hamdi was playing there. It wasn't necessarily a great result, but it wasn't the only difference in this lineup. You had Joel Waterman and Lassi Lapalainen playing on the wingback and the left midfielder, and on the right side you had Alistair Johnston and Zachary Broguillard. And what I thought was very interesting is the breakthroughs that Montreal were doing were a lot more on the right side, but also defensively they felt to be more assured, more solid on the right side, which led me to this research. I can't say research, I guess, but this is what I found, and I thought it was really fun to have an eye and look at. If we look at Joel Waterman and Lassi Lapalainen, of course there were some substitutions at halftime, so this is only the first half for all these players. This is the heat map. And you're seeing, when you're looking at Joel Waterman and Lassi Lapalainen, the link-up is not as clear. There's a disconnect. The overlap doesn't go all together, and defensively, Joel Waterman was playing as the left center back of Montreal's 5-person backline. And you see the lack of defensive recoveries and ball touches for the left side in the box also of Montreal defensively. When you're looking at the breakthroughs, there were some breakthroughs on the left side, but the amount of breakthroughs are not as consistent as the right side. And this is the same story every single game for CF Montreal. Alistair Johnston is the mainstay here, but him playing in a different position, he was the right side of the center back instead of playing his right wing back position that he has been accustomed to. So this shows still a great cooperation between Broguillard and between Johnston. Defensively present in the box we see, but also present higher on the pitch with a higher percentage of ball touches, creating big breakthroughs all the way to the box and creating goal scoring actions and chances. My question is, who's the solution? How do you bring that breakthrough more often to the left side? And I think that's a question to ponder going forward for Montreal.
Well, I mean, the left side and finding solutions on the left side of the field is not a unique problem to Montreal or even to MLS. It's a position that, you always joke. We used to joke for Canadian mothers, if you're parents, when you're bringing your kid up, put them as a defender. Make them left-sided too, because you're going to have a better advantage there as well, because there is sort of a lack of left-footed players that can play out there, players that are getting sort of get converted to play out there often. But I'm looking at these graphs. And you can watch this on our live show if you're listening to this podcast form, but they just show, as Kevin just described, gaps kind of in the connectiveness, and that's what really strikes out. You have one side of this graph that is quite fluid, and there's quite an interaction between the players, and the other side that's almost, it's like siloed, to use a corporate term, right? So the answer to this question is it's not necessarily about these individual players, it's about how they work together, and you have to look at stuff like this, and you have to look at data like this to make sure that you're getting the most efficient use of your players.
And I put the lineup of Montreal on the screen too, so we can include Ahmed Abdi in that conversation. I didn't put him in the stats there because of his substitution at halftime and how it wasn't perfect for him. But I don't think he's a solution to replace Georgi Mihailovic. And Georgi Mihailovic was a bit that solution on that left side, but he had a more of a free role. When I look at that left side of Montreal now, that might be where improvement is needed this summer, but it might be also where a better sacrifice of the right side to make defender guess. Defenders know that it's going to go towards the Johnston and Guillard and Torres side. If it's not Guillard, it's Mathieu Choignard, who's been playing there lately and has been doing great too. So how do you almost have to sacrifice the right side a little bit by forcing the left side to actually open up the left side eventually. It's a quite interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, look, and I mean, there's going to be a lot of thought experiments between Montreal over the next 4 to 6 weeks because Georgie's out for a stretch, and I think 4 weeks is what I heard, but that's going to take some time to get back into the swing of things as well, too. So you can't expect him to jump back in flying the way he was earlier in the season when Kevin was talking about him as a potential MVP candidate. That's off the table now. It probably was anyway because of the circumstances where he played and that he wouldn't score as many goals as usually he wins an MVP. But nonetheless, you know, when you're out for this stretch along, it's going to take you a while to get back used to it.
Yeah, and
sorry, go ahead. So MLS seasons are, you know, we joke at the start of the season, you can't win the MLS Cup in the early part of the season, but you can lose it. I think that in the middle part of the season, you can't really make the playoffs, but you can drop out of a playoff race too, in a similar vein. This is the grind. This is where your depth comes into play. This is where your ability to understand and tweak and get ready to set yourself up for a good run down the stretch matters. And then Georgie injury, let's try and spit that out, might actually benefit them in a way because you're going to shut him down for 6 weeks, and maybe that means he'll be fresher come fall time because Montreal's not going to do anything in the playoffs without their best player. They're not. I mean, that's fair. So, you got to look at it half full if you're looking at that in those ways.
Yeah, and we can look at the statistics of the same match. And Montreal did win 2-1 against Charlotte, and the second half was really good for Montreal. Of course, they opened up the scoring with Ramel Kyoto at the 6th minute. Guzman Curullo really put a damper on the festivities at Stade Saputo by equalizing just a few minutes later, as it was 1-1 for the rest of the first half, until Mathieu Choignard at the beginning of the second half made a great, I guess, how do you call it? Impersonation. He's was a great imitation. It's hard to say, but I felt like it was Nacho Piatti on the field for a second, and then he curled it to the left of the keeper into the far post, and Mathieu Choignard, while right of the keeper's left, and Mathieu Choignard scored the winning goal on Saint Jean-Baptiste Day. Well, the day after, but it was celebrating Saint Jean-Baptiste Day. Quite beautiful storyline for Montreal. 8 shots, 3 on target, 48% possession, 17 crosses for Montreal, an expected goal of 0.8, lower than Charlotte. That's because Karol Swiderski, who's quite cold at this moment, hasn't scored in his last 9 MLS game. But the old Karol at the end of the game had the tying goal at the end of his foot, but he skied it 3 yards away from the line. It's harder to sky it from there than to score. I don't know how you did it, Karol, but that's why the expected goal of Charlotte is 1.2. Right there, that was almost a full expected goal. But Montreal got what they needed at the end of this one, 3 points.
Maybe that's what Adriana Leon was looking at when she was playing the friendly on Sunday for Canada, but we'll leave that well enough alone. Look, we said heading into this that Montreal had to win because they punted basically in terms of the lineup choice in the Voyageurs Cup in midweek. They got the win. There's concerning stats here. That 0.8 is not great in terms of producing offense, producing attack. They need to improve that. They're not going to be better teams if they do that, I don't think. So that said, though, you got the 3 points, points scored, points pocket, all that sort of jazz. It was important to just get the result this time of year. Yeah. You don't care how. But yeah, I mean that is the question. Can they produce offense without their talisman, without the guy that's stirring the pot?
Well, the beauty is Mason Toye is making his comeback, so you'll have Mason Toye and Ramel Kyoto. So Ramel Kyoto will eventually be positioned to the left of Montreal's attack, with Mason Toye up front and Joaquin Torres as the offensive trident. That is the way Mihailovic will be replaced in a different way, but then the question will be when he's fit, how do you go back to a different type of formation? But that's going to be a problem that only need a solution about 6 weeks from now. But now it's time to talk about our sponsor. Manscaped. Manscaped, the worldwide leader in men's grooming products, is giving you 20% off and free shipping worldwide with the code SOCCER today. And you can take this opportunity to get the Performance Package 4.0, which is a great addition to my daily grooming routine. Parts of it are used on a daily routine, of course, and you have this Shed travel bag that comes with it. It's a leather bag that is very useful to bring with you when you travel and even just to keep everything neat and tidy. The Performance Package 4.0 comes with the Manscaped anti-chafing boxers that are a great boxer pair to play sports, to play soccer, and of course they're anti-chafing, so it's great for walking and cycling, and I've been using them on a daily basis. Different ones, of course. I have the Crop Preserver here, which is a deodorant for your personal area that is very useful when you come out of the shower, when you get ready for any activity, personal activities, or with partners. And of course, you also have the Crop Reviver, which is a great way to refresh later on in the day before moving on to your nightly, evening program. Also, of course, the Groom, the Lawnmower 4.0, the pièce de résistance of Manscaped's Performance Package. This is what you use to groom your personal area, your body, and all other places. It's the greatest tool for your family jewels, and it comes with a weed whacker, and you can get all of that at 20% off with the code SOCCER today at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with the code SOCCER today at manscaped.com. We'll take a short break. When we come back, great Soccer Today content.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Kev Laramé saying thank you to our patrons. You can join the patrons and the shout-out tier at patreon.com/2solitudes. You can be like Blue Collar Dan, who always gives us a shout-out before every show. That's quite appreciated, Dan. You have no idea. Thank you for listening. Also, long-time listeners like Ian White, Jordan Kellerman, Martin Fournier, and you can join the shout-out tier and the super shout-out tier of the podcast by going to the Two Solitudes podcast Patreon page at patreon.com/2solitudes, and you'll get access to the Two Solitudes Soccer podcast. Also, hosted by yours truly and Duane Rollins, as we talk about the Canadian men's national team, Canadian soccer as a whole, with no holds barred, behind the paywall. Now it's time for the MLS Weekend Review. Duane and I will look at the couple games that really caught our attention. And Duane, I want to start the weekend review by looking at Seattle, Kansas City. It was the first game on the schedule on Saturday, and it was an important game for Kansas City. They had a couple of difficulties, and they laid an egg. Seattle continues to play well, 5-1-1 since winning the CONCACAF Champions League. Seattle may be the best team after LA in the Western Conference. Will Bruin scored the opening goal at the 8th minute. Jordan Morris, the second one at the 71st, and Christian Roldan made it 3-0 at the 76th. 15 shots, 8 on target. A performance to be really mindful of if you are Montreal. Seattle and Montreal next opponent late Wednesday night. And with this performance, you will not see Raul Ruidiaz on Wednesday for Montreal, which is good, but you're looking at a team that has quite the momentum with them heading into a clash with CF Montreal.
Well, and Toronto on the weekend too. So a lot of our viewers, are either Montreal, or Toronto based. So we're going to get to lot to see this team, and of course we've all seen a lot of Seattle over the past few years. Seattle maybe the second best team in the league behind LA. Well, I mean, water's wet, right? Like the Sounders, I think one day might not be good again, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen because they do have the ability to just continually put out a good product, and they know how to play. They know who they are. They have an identity. They're a team in Major League Soccer that has a style that you can identify with them. They're a quick countering, offensive, straight ahead kind of team. And so I don't mean that dismissively. Like they use the advantage of their home field, which is a little bit faster pace, and they have some wingers that can get the front foot. Jordan Morris chief among them, other players like that, Lugero stir in the pot, and you got a great team that's just going to win and win and win and win. And you add players like they did in the offseason, and it's hard to to see otherwise. Now that there's a little bit of limited free agency within Major League Soccer, what their team, and it's not with big money, right? Free agency in Major League Soccer is not with money. You can't even get as much money as the original team can give them, right? So what it's about winning. We've seen it here in Toronto with Drew Moore came back in the original free agent class. Like, that's the moves you're going to make. And when you're a team like Seattle that's there every year, players that haven't won are going to go, I'm going to finish my career in Seattle and try and get the ring, right?
It's like Kevin Durant joining the Golden State Warriors a few years ago. Like, well, might as well go there to win because I ain't going to win nowhere else. So don't be surprised if Kevin Durant joins the Warriors again next year. Who knows? I don't think that'll ever happen. But this ain't a basketball podcast. But to me, that was a great win by Seattle. And when we look at the standings later on, once again, we'll see the progress Seattle is doing in the standings. But Duane, let's talk about Toronto's big win. Toronto was at home celebrating the presence of Insigne for the first time in the stands as a Toronto FC player. Not officially, of course. They're still waiting for the window to open. He can't play yet, can't train really yet. But it doesn't matter. They won 2-1 against Atlanta. Quite contested game, but the return of Jonathan Osorio in the starting 11. We'll look at the starting 11 in a few minutes. Ralph Prizo coming off the bench, but being influential, scoring the game winner at that one. And Lourdes Araujo really helped me in my fantasy, by the way. I had quite the weekend in my fantasy. Thank you, Hani Mukhtar. Thank you, Luis Araujo. 57th minute, he scored the equalizer at that point. But Toronto won with 15 shots, 4 on target, 44% possession, 10 crosses. That's 5 less than Atlanta. But the stat that is intriguing to me, it's 2.1 expected goal. Goals were really deserved for Toronto in this one, and defensively able to keep Atlanta to 1 goal, even though their expected goal could have maybe said 2 if chances would have gone other way. Toronto, big win at home, and they're not in the bottom tier of the East right now. They're more closer to being maybe a playoff conversation part, at least.
Well, yeah, and look, I mentioned this last week. They're a 4-game homestand, right? And I said this was going to make or break their season. We'll see who else they add in the window. But right now, even with Insigne in this lineup, you'd have to think that this is a playoff team at best. But even to be that, they need to get positive results. I think I said 12 points they needed in this 4-game homestand. Maybe 10 to 12. Well, they're 3 there already. So that's a good start there. Look, one thing I'm noticing when you look at the statistical breakdown in the early part of the season, TFC was typically winning the possession battle, even sometimes significantly, but losing the game significantly and giving up much greater chances. Like the XGs were like 0.4 or 4.0 some games, right? And I think that what they've done is Bob Bradley has adjusted the style in the last few weeks because they have been better. They have been better defensively. They have not typically been having more of the ball. They've adjusted back more into a counter team in the last little while. Maybe not as crazy as they were under Armas, where they were trying to give the ball away legitimately to try and get it back in dangerous positions, which is a tactic that can work. Wasn't a tactic that was going to work with that team, and maybe a better coach might have noticed that, but that's, water under the bridge.
Yeah.
So that tells me that they have adjusted this. Now, how they work in CNAN is a conversation we're going to have 15 times in the next month, so we won't get into it right now.
No, exactly. But when we look at Toronto's starting 11, Duane, we see the return of Chris Mavinga in the starting 11, which is really useful. Pozuelo still used as the right midfielder in the 4-4-2 formation. Jonathan Osorio back in the central of that midfield with Michael Bradley. Nelson to the left, Jesus Jimenez and Nayu Akinola up top. This, as of now, could be considered Toronto's A1 lineup, as it is, outside of the 2 changes that we talked about of Mavinga Osorio, the lineup that Bob Bradley has played lately. Yeah, look, I talked about Osorio a lot last week, so I'm not going to get back into it again. TLDR, if you didn't hear it, is that TFC is a much better team with him. The stats back it up. They score almost twice as many goals when he's in the lineup as when he's not. So you need to keep him in there, I would think. The big question we're going to have in this little while, over the next little while here, is the Pozuelo question, what you do with him, because he plays a similar role to Insigne. But I think you got to keep him in. He's been playing a little bit better. He seems to be motivated by the fact that he has a guy coming in challenging for him, for his moments, for his role. Mavinga is a player that during, 2017 was a long time ago. Let's keep that in mind. But in 2017, he was absolute key to that championship run. Yeah. Now, he's never been back to the same since. Whether that's been form or injury, we don't know. If he can come back anywhere close to that, that's going to be a significant difference. TFC has had to play
guys that I think they brought in with an eye, with thinking about the future this year. They've had to make them starter players for a lot of this half, and to only be 5 points back isn't the end of the world, right? They are still within touching distance. Had they not got that win, then that's a different story. They play Columbus tomorrow.
Yeah.
Different conversation if they don't get a result there too. They need to make these points. Seattle's coming in the middle. I'm willing to let those points go away to a certain extent because that's a damn good team. But then the next week you come in, you get another 3 points, you get 12 out of this, then suddenly, you're starting to think with the playoffs. And Insigne's back in the lineup, big crowd there, everyone's happy. This was a decent result for them. This was absolutely a team that they needed to beat if they were going to consider themselves potentially a playoff team.
Well, let's look at the Eastern Conference standings right now because it's that time, and let's look at the adventure, the journey of Toronto. They're not in the bottom half. They don't have 14. They're not with DC, and they're not with Chicago. They're a little higher. They're facing Columbus. Columbus is struggling. They could be better. I will review that game on Thursday, by the way. Atlanta is 10th. Charlotte is 9th. They dropped a little bit, and Miami is 8th with 21 points. We're now going to the playoff position, starting in 7th position with Cincinnati in the Eastern Conference with 23 points. Still, they are for real, but a surprise in the Eastern Conference, FC Cincinnati. We're surprised to not see him dead last, to be honest, and they're doing way better, and thank you, Lucho Acosta, for that. New England clawed back from the big, deep trouble they were in a few weeks ago, now 6th. Orlando is 5th. New York, the Red Bull, 26 points, tied with Montreal on 3rd place. Montreal, of course, better differential, better score scored, and more wins, is 3rd. New York City FC, the champions of Major League Soccer's playoff last year, are 2nd. They lost the top of the East to the Philadelphia Union, maybe the most complete team. Not flashy, but a complete organizational type of formation that has grasped the top of the Eastern Conference almost at midway of the season.
Yeah, Philadelphia is a similar team in the sense that they figured an identity out and they know what they are in terms of the young players and trying to churn through a system there that can be consistent. And if you can do that in Major League Soccer, you're going to be successful. In many ways, New York City FC is the same way. They have a consistent system, a consistent network that they can produce players for, that they can find talent in, and they can continue to be successful. They're different in how they approach it, but they're similar. In many ways, those two teams are very similar in terms of how they do things, just from a slightly different, there's a fork in the road. One went this way, one went the other way, but they're both ultimately kind of in the same place. So yeah, look, the East is not very good. And the fact Montreal is that close is a testament to how well they played earlier in the year. Whether they can continue that, who knows? But again, this is it's anyone's grab. If you grab a hold of this in the second half of the season, you can take this. And I don't think any team here is particularly that unbeatable on the East. And then, you're probably going to play a juggernaut in an MLS Cup final. But, well, the East won last year. So
you never know. Here's the Western Conference side. LAFC, best team. And so far, contenders and favorite for the Supporters' Shield and for the playoffs. Vancouver, which will break down their result against New England, that was Sunday night. It was a 0-0 draw. We'll look at it in a second. They are 9th right now in the Western Conference. Houston is 8th. Houston, interesting. Not doing anything flashy, but just hanging around. But it's still early, but quite tight in the Western Conference. Seattle 7th, and they're continuing their rise in the Western Conference. Before long, Seattle will be in the higher tier of this top half of the Western Conference. The Galaxy are 6th, Nashville 5th. Galaxy will play Montreal next Monday on July 4th, Independence Day. It will be at Dignity Health StubHub, I don't know, Home Depot, whatever the name of the stadium is. They will be in Carson City at that stadium next Monday night. Nashville is 5th, Dallas 4th, Austin 3rd, Salt Lake 2nd. Still surprising for Salt Lake to be 2nd with 29 points. Doing something right in Salt Lake City for, of course, this soccer team. And LAFC, best team in the league so far, heading into the second half of the playoffs. And I've talked about Vancouver, and we'll look at the stats of Vancouver's 0-0 draw. It's an interesting aspect. Vancouver is hot and cold. They, of course, have had a couple of wins and unbeaten streak. They've done well. They're going to be in the final of the Canadian Championship, which we know when it's going to happen, Duane, by the way. It will be in July, on July 26th at BC Place, 7:30 Pacific, 10:30 p.m. And You know, it will be quite a great game at BC Place for the Whitecaps against Toronto FC, the final of the Canadian Championship. But if we look at Vancouver's big draw, because it was a big draw, they're playing a better team than people think. It was New England. It was at BC Place on June 26th. 16 shots for Vancouver, 6 on target, 41% possession for the Whitecaps, 84% passing accuracy, 15 crosses, and 1.2 expected goals. Still, no goal though for the Vancouver Whitecaps. On the New England side, Josie Altidore did play actually. It was quite interesting. Got booed. He got booed at BC Place. Quite the history for Josie Altidore at BC Place. He got flipped the bird a few times. 16 shots, 2 on target for New England, 59% possession, 87% pass accuracy, 18 crosses, and 1.2 expected goal. Same as Vancouver, which brings us to the starting 11 for Vancouver against New England. Couple of changes since the last time they played in the Canadian Championship. This was a 3-4-2-1 formation. Cody Cropper, who really is taking a hold of this number 1 goalkeeper job in Vancouver. Blackman, Veselinovic, and Brown were the backline. Ryan Raposo, hey Ryan if you're listening, Owusu, Kubas, and Gaudino was in midfield. Ryan Gold and Daiber Casedo were your attacking midfielder, with Lucas Cavallini leading the line for the Whitecaps. Still a 0-0 draw, but not bad. We looked at standings, still in grasp of a playoff spot. The Whitecaps are only 2 points away of a playoff position in the Eastern Conference, and the Western Conference, which we can see the standings once again. With a victory over the next couple of games, Vancouver could be surprisingly in a good position heading into the second half of the season. With no expectations of success, Vancouver could be in contention for a playoff spot, and that would be surprising with the bad beginning of the season they had. Kansas City struggling still, San Jose also struggling. When will we talk about Minnesota and Portland and Colorado, teams that were touted to be in a playoff position, but so far away of a playoff position, just like Portland? But a big win against Colorado quite muddies the territory of the playoff picture on the Western Conference side. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I hope you enjoyed all this amazing content we brought you today. If so, you can support us financially with joining the shoutout tier, joining the super shoutout tier, or just subscribing to the Patreon extra content page at patreon.com/2solitudes. You get access to the 2 Solitudes podcast, and of course you get also access to multiple content down the road when we come later to the World Cup and all. You get a couple of more things, and you can see here the different tiers. You get the $2 tier, the 2S tier, the shout out tier for $5, and the super shout out tier, which I will thank you personally in every single show of Soccer Today, and that is available at patreon.com/2solitudes. If you like this show, you can subscribe everywhere you like your favorite podcast, and where you get your favorite podcasts, of course, that is Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Spreaker, which is our host, is a great place to subscribe to this show also. And we want to thank Manscaped for being the sponsor of today's show. You get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and you use the code SOCCERTODAY. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SOCCERTODAY at manscaped.com. Unlock your confidence and always have the right tools for the job with Manscaped. But of course, until next time, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramie. We wish you a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.